The one, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Oop, better move that a little closer. Well, continued good afternoon to everybody. 3 seconds, Jessica. It was good. I like that. That was a good one. You can't give me 3 seconds.
Am I literally the butt of a joke already?
No.
Didn't we just start the committee?
Here we go. I call the May 29th, 2025 Audit and Risk Management Committee meeting of the Arizona Board and Regents to order. Claudia, do we have a quorum?
We do.
Congrats, that's great, all four of us. Hardworking four people. The committee is expected to adjourn its meeting ahead of schedule, though we are targeted to 4:15 at the end of the executive session. Live stream of the public meeting is available to the public on youtube.com or at the ABOR Live link. Today we have a couple of key items on our agenda, beginning with an update of the fiscal year 2025 internal audit activities, the approval of the fiscal year 26 internal audit plans, and a discussion of proposed revisions to new charter templates for the university's internal audit departments and their internal audit review boards. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from our last March 27th, 2025 public and executive session. Are there any questions or comments related to the minutes? Seeing none, I'll move to a motion. I move the committee approve the minutes from the March 27th, 2025 public and executive sessions and the Audit and Risk Management Committee meetings. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? We move on. Thank you. Our next item is an update on the fiscal year 2025 internal audit activities and approval of the fiscal year 2026 audit plans for Arizona State University, Northern Arizona University, and the University of Arizona. We will wait until all the universities have presented their fiscal year 26 audit plans and then have a single motion to approve all three plans with one vote. I'm going to ask Brad, again, Brad, from the ABOR office and introduce this discussion. Brad, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. So just by way of tracking the conversation this far. So this time last year, the board approved the internal audit plans for fiscal year 2025. Those plans have been in place. The university internal audit departments have been executing those audits according to that plan, working with their local internal audit review boards in order to track progress. We've got an intermediary update on how those audits were going back in January and now are getting the annual update. So we've asked the universities to give us an update on the details of those audits as well as any critical items that they're addressing that were found in those audits. And then additionally, the universities will take the risk assessment conversations that we had back in March and that were happening with their IARBs all spring in order to generate proposed audit plans for the board to hear today. So with your permission, I think we would invite Morgan Olson and Lisa Grace from ASU to come forward to present.
They're on opposite sides of the room, but here they come.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. So I will give a brief report on the working of the ASU Institution Internal Audit Review Board, and then Lisa will talk about the proposed internal audit program for next fiscal year. IARB has continued to work effectively, I believe, throughout the last year. We met quarterly in September, December, February, and most recently at the end of April. We use those meetings as an opportunity to review the internal audit office's progress toward the existing audit program, and Lisa will talk a little bit more about that. We also spend a fair amount of time on reviewing the results of individual internal audits to look at trends and identify places where we can perhaps get ahead of things that we think are likely to be reflected in other parts of the university that haven't been reviewed. I'm kind of big on that. So for example, I'm probably a little bit slow on the uptake, but, the third time we saw, gosh, we have areas where the Active Directory, part of the internal control structure for our IT environment, was not set up in an ideal fashion. Said, you know what, why don't we not do this, department by department, but take an active step to make sure we're where we need to be across the university. So that is in process, but I think is a good example of the types of value that we try to get out of having an IARB and the process that we go through, et cetera. So Lisa always goes through various open issues that we have, status, what progress we're making toward obviously closing them, et cetera. And she also reports on their internal office metrics with respect to quality control. And with respect to that latter, we are getting ready for a second 5-year review. That's an external peer review of the operation of the university audit program. So that'll be coming up at the end of the year here. The auditing standards that are mentioned in the agenda today is something that the board reviewed, discussed, and ultimately approved, and will be in front of you today. And then most recently in April, we did take a look at the proposed audit program, asked some questions, made some suggestions, and Lisa made the adjustments that she thought were necessary, and I'll just turn to you to address that.
All right, perfect. I'll just start with the current plan update. So from that perspective, we submitted 4 assurance reports as well as 2 reports from our continuous auditing program as part of our materials. There was one significant finding in those reports, which Morgan has already indicated, related to Active Directory and privileged access. As he mentioned, we did have a great discussion just on how that could be addressed holistically, since that functionality is distributed across the university. So we'll work with information security and the unit level IT areas over the next several months in those areas. We continue to make great progress on our plan. We expect that we'll substantially complete our plan by the end of the fiscal year. We will have some minimal carryover, which is built into our fiscal year 26 plan. Changes to the plan were included in our materials. We added 2 projects. We changed the approach of 2 projects from assurance projects to advisory reviews, as well as reduced scope of one of those reviews in order to prioritize other projects. We also removed 1 project off of the plan and just moved it to the fiscal year 26 plan. These were all discussed as part of Internal Audit Review Board and approved as part of that. We currently have 3 significant issues outstanding, one of which we're in the process of doing verification related to continuity of operations. We also have 2 other issues that we'll actively monitor throughout the end of the year when remediation plans are expected to be complete. From a quality assurance program perspective, I wanted to provide just a quick update on that as we're moving into our 5-year review as well. Last June, we implemented our 3-year strategy plan. That strategy plan really focuses on 7 areas that we've identified that we want to progress over the next 3 years. We've defined our current state, our objectives, initiatives to achieve those objectives, and then our desired end state as part of that program. We provide quarterly updates to the Internal Audit Review Board related to that progress, as well as the performance metrics that Morgan mentioned. Our quality assurance program includes both internal and external assessments. Our internal assessments really involve peer reviews over our completed projects to ensure we have compliance to our methodology. And then we have our external assessment, which is a 5-year requirement according to standards, where we do a full assessment to compliance to standards with validation from an external party as part of that. We're in the process of that assessment, so we anticipate, we're taking the approach of the self-assessment with the independent validation. Another acceptable approach is just to do a full external assessment of our shop. We have chose the self-assessment with an independent validation for a couple reasons. Our defined methodology, which we've had implemented for multiple years, really is built to ensure compliance to our standards. So when we go through a review such as this, I'm not looking to get confirmation necessarily that we're compliant. I already am very confident that we're compliant. But the value that comes out of it is really the process improvement areas. The self-assessment is very extensive and requires a detailed analysis of your process and why you're doing things versus just the execution of them, which those process improvement ideas will come out of. The other component of that primarily is cost as well. There's a pretty substantial cost to have that completely outsourced, which those funds could be better spent developing the team or other actions. We anticipate completing our self-assessment in June with the independent validation occurring in the October to December time period. As part of our IRB meetings in April, we did present our risk assessment results and our proposed audit plan. Those are in materials today. Our risk assessment followed our established process that we've had over multiple years, which is a fairly comprehensive process to ensure that we're focusing our limited resources in the right areas. We have a defined audit universe, which consists of 81 auditable auditable units, which is really a process function or department that we would perform an audit activity in. It also includes our 34 auditable entities, which are our colleges and VP units that perform financial, operational, business, IT, controls, and activities. We assess these items through a combination of defined risk measures as well as analytics based off financial data and FTE attributes. We have extensive risk discussions across the university, including key stakeholders, senior leadership, and executive leadership. We work closely with our enterprise risk management function to ensure that our plan is closely coordinated with the identified enterprise risk areas. The proposed plan that we did come up with, we review with a subset of those individuals that we have the risk discussions with, including the list of alternative projects that we considered but did not prioritize as part of the plan. That really ensures that we're factoring in management's input on what we're covering, and equally as important, what we're not getting coverage on, to ensure there's agreement that we're focusing in the right areas for the university. Our plan consists of 11 assurance projects. 2 of those relate to our continuous auditing program that we execute on a quarterly basis. We also have 2 advisory projects, and then we have a bucket of hours that we allocate for management requests as we receive those during the year. Our project composition includes IT projects focused in Active Directory. We had a few of those on our plan from last year as well. We'll continue that coverage. Logical access focused in the area of our warehouse and our ODS, as well as cybersecurity. Our compliance projects are focused on NCAA 2- and 4-year transfer eligibility, as well as our mandatory employee training. Our operational projects consist of physical security, third-party risk management, construction change orders, and AI governance. And our financial projects consist of 2 auditable entity audits, which cover financial transactions for that unit, as well as our recurring P-card procedures. In creation of that audit plan, our audit assumptions going into that really stayed consistent from prior years. We have a very aggressive approach on allocating the vast majority of the audit team's time to actual execution, as well as our quality program. So with that, I'll pause, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Regina?
Thank you, Chair. Lisa, so your IT or Active Director, what are the challenges you have there? How is that? Because that's huge.
Yeah, so I would say the biggest challenges there is just there's several instances of that. So given our distributed environment across the university, it's performed in several different areas. So in prior years, we've had coverage on our large area that's enterprise, or that is controlled through our enterprise technology team. So not only the core IT area, but other units that they support. But then there's several colleges and VP units that also manage their own instance of it. So the challenge is more just getting that broad coverage, since we can't just audit one set of controls.
Thank you.
how many people on your team are actively engaged in performing audits?
All 7 of us, including myself.
Okay. And do you have sufficient resources to do the job?
We have sufficient resources, so we have sufficient resources to execute our plan, right? We could always execute a much larger plan with more resources. And that is why with our defined audit universe, I think it's critical that we can articulate, this is what we're able to cover with the resources we have. We have a defined audit cadence based off the criticality of the audit unit, whether it's critical, high, medium, or low. And then we have those discussions where we can't meet that cadence as they come about each year on, we can't cover these areas, here's where we've prioritized to make sure that we are focusing on all of those areas. A team of 7 is not going to be able to achieve full compliance with our audit cadence on a general basis. ASU is just too large. So that's why those risk discussions and just being able to articulate where we have coverage and where we don't have coverage is critical from my perspective to ensure what coverage we have is appropriate given the risk across the university, as well as where we just don't have that coverage.
How many additional people would you need to achieve the cadence that you referred to?
I'm not sure I can estimate that off the top of my head. I'm happy to get that data for you, but I'm going to answer it in a different way because I can't answer your question directly, but one of the ways and one of the objectives we have over this next year is our large bucket of medium risk areas. So most of our plan on an annual basis is going to cover critical and high risk areas. We very much achieve those objectives. Our middle area, our medium risk areas where we have probably the most exceptions that will come up from a cadence perspective, we're looking at trying to develop just a lesser scope methodology for those areas that would allow us to have some coverage, we're a pretty substantive shop. So when we have a full assurance report, it is comprehensive end to end on what we're covering. In these medium risk areas, we need to develop a better approach that would provide some assurances on their core risk areas, but at a much lesser scope than what a typical project would cover.
Thank you. I would be interested in hearing your thoughts about what additional resources you would need to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lisa, I would bring up just to Regent Stein's question, ASU's on the cutting edge of implementation of AI in so much, but to that staffing question and kind of scope question, are you looking at any introductions of augmented intelligence into this process for your committee?
That's a great question. We haven't yet. We do have tools available at ASU that are available to units across the university. So we do have licensing in those tools, and we're looking for ways we can utilize that. Current ways that we do implement it is really just background, right? Like we can go out and pull risk assessment information and pull background information much more efficient than we ever could. So we're already doing that. But to actually employ that to execute the audits, perform test steps, we've not really reached into that area yet, but it is something that we're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right.
All right.
Well, thank you for that overview.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next, Bjorn Flugstad and Mark Rupert. There he is on the left side of me. Please come up. What was it? Please come on. You're the next contestant.
We're over here, we're maintaining organizational independence.
I get it. Floor is
All right.
yours.
Chair Brewster, members of the committee. I'll start off, turn it over to Mark in a minute. IARB meetings at NAU, we've had 4 since the January committee meeting. Looking really at progress of the audit plan, making sure that items are being followed up on that have been identified as improvement opportunities. That's been one of the larger items that we've focused in on over the past several months here during the meetings. In addition to the audit planning process for next fiscal year, we've spent a couple meetings with the members of the IARB talking about what our potential audit areas, thinking about risk, and thinking about where we could get the most benefit from the audit team, which Mark will talk about, because it is a very lean and leaner team right now. Thinking also about one of the tools that we've utilized more rather than full audits is fraud risk assessments that Mark will conduct with areas. He's included a number of areas within my team, such as procurement, such as the comptroller's office, such as camps and conferences area, thinking about where there could be potential for fraud and utilize that as a really effective mechanism rather than a full-blown audit itself. So those are some of the focus areas that we've taken over the past 6 months here, and maybe I'll just stop here and let Mark talk a little bit about the status of this year's audit and launch into next year's audit plan.
Okay. Thanks, Bjorn, Regents. So ultimately, working with our IRB, we did defer 2 projects due to staffing concerns. And I would suggest if you have questions about the staffing issues, maybe that's better for executive session. But in essence, I've been a solo auditor for about 6 months at this point. But we have made progress. So in the materials, you have the Institutional Biosafety Committee audit and a completed athletics ticket office. There were no significant improvement opportunities identified in those audits. Institutional biosafety was clean, and the athletics ticket office has a number of management level items. That's it. We are making great progress on completing cash management, and then we have planned and are in the fieldwork process for our affiliate management audit and a statewide risk assessment that we're doing for statewide campuses. So and then we continue, as Bjorn said, for fraud risk assessment. I've just worked with our head of campus health, so we'll be scheduling a fraud risk assessment for all over some part of campus health. We're still working through those details. May do multiple components at this point, but we are working on that. Audit follow-up efforts have been fruitful. We have no significant improvement opportunities outstanding. However, in that regard, I do want to make you aware that the IRB did vote to downgrade the conflict of interest system replacement, which was a significant improvement opportunity, in part because of improvements that were made, and also due to the strategic finance efforts, some redesigned priorities for where ITS should spend that money on other upgrades. Rick Gefeller and I were in those meetings, and we concurred with the IRB's decision. So as to we have a number of other improvement opportunities that are outstanding. Some of those are pending. They're progressive. So once one thing is done, others will fall in place. So some are outstanding a little longer than we would like, but they are in that status. Administratively, we've been focused on policies, procedures, process to come into compliance with the standards. We, like Lisa mentioned, are due for a quality assurance review. The challenge is with the staffing we've had, and the standards went into effect 6 months ago, essentially, 5 months, I guess, at this point. Will we really have enough work to review to show compliance? So we have policies in place, but we've got to also generate work. So whether we delay that or not, we're still discussing, and we would come back and make whatever recommendation we would make in the future. So that would be a future decision. That's what I have on the current plan. Any questions before I summarize the IRB activities?
Regents? Mark, keep going.
Okay. We added a new member, Jeff McKay, who is NAU's new Vice President of Campus Operations. I'm going to get that wrong. Capital Planning and Campus Operations. And then, as Bjorn mentioned, they met 4 times during the year, which focused on, status of the audit plan, resource challenges, compliance with the standards. We implemented a new strategic vision, which I'll get to momentarily as part of the fiscal audit plan. And then, of course, developing the proposed plan that we're presenting today. Any questions on IRB? Okay, great. So we built plan primarily based on ERM. So we use the ERM risk assessment process to help us decide where audits should be, and we make sure those audits are aligned to the risk. We also have an audit universe as well. We look at higher education trends and those things. We get IRB input, of course, A board directives, so we always have some type of IT security aspect on the plan. That's pretty traditional. In terms of resourcing, because of the challenge we've had, we decided for fiscal '26 to move forward with a staff auditor instead of one senior auditor. So I've calculated that to be a 40% impact on plan, primarily because we have recruiting time and then we've got training and so forth. So for that first year, I'm looking at probably a 40% benefit from that position and hopefully much more after that. And our focus will be on college grads, and I'll reach out to former interns who may be interested in staying in Flagstaff and working for the shop. So with that, we have some carryover audits that we're planned to continue and finish, and then otherwise we have NCAA compliance, cloud security, focused primarily on our Microsoft Azure contract. We're going to look at residence life, tuition waivers, research award administration, and then continuing the rollout fraud risk assessment, capturing departments throughout campus. So, and then our strategic vision is that we will be a solutions-driven, resource-smart partner for governance, risk, and control as key components of NEU success. The mission for InterAudit is what is laid out in the new charters that you all will be looking at today and voting on. And then that's supported by a number of metrics that we're going to roll out and track over time. So with that, I would request approval of our proposed fiscal '26 plan.
More to come on that, for sure. There we go. Any other questions from the regents? Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, that leaves us with the U of A and John and Bill. John Arnold, Bill Harrison, come on up. Bill, you're now a veteran in this. Floor's yours, John.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you. Similar to the other universities, IARB committee is functioning okay. Since Bill's gotten here, we're reconstituting a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, we've had some transition in our leadership positions at the university. I had one member move from the research slot and is now in our IT slot on the IARB. So we're continuing to look at membership and make sure we have the right people that are there to adequately advise Bill and also to implement the recommendations coming back out of internal audit. We met about a month ago to review the audit plan for fiscal '26, gave good feedback to Bill, had a really good discussion in the room, which led into the audit plan that's before you today. With that, I'll turn it over to Bill to go over the audit plan.
All right, thank you. Just a quick update on our current year's audit plan. And so I'm confident that we'll complete it by the end of the fiscal year. Since the last update, we issued 2 reports on IT security awareness training and then a master sublease agreement. The IT security awareness training report had 1 red issue related to enforcement when non-compliance with the training requirement was identified. And so management's provided a corrective action plan, which should be completed by this fall. And I think in a related matter, that's also raised questions about role-based training as well. And there is another management action related to specific role-based training focused around regulatory requirements that is also in play based upon the results of this audit. So that's also in play. We're sort of in process for doing designated campus colleagues, which are affiliates, they're not university employees, but those are affiliates of the university who have access to our network and also to our facilities. So we're looking at control processes about how they're onboarded, how they're monitored, and how they're offboarded when their time of service, their affiliation with the university ends. So we're midstream on that. And we're also looking at a component unit, Eller Executive Education. We're right midstream on that audit as well. That's going well, lots of cooperation in terms of our questions and meetings and documentations being provided to my team. And so again, for both of those audits, I anticipate completion by the end of June.
Quick question on that. Is that a regular process for that school, for that audit at the Eller School? Is that as needed?
More of a, well, it's, what we're doing is going through and systematically auditing all of our affiliates. And so This is the
They're,
first one in that process, and then they will cycle back around at some point in the future.
Thank you for that clarification.
So I also report on audit follow-up. Again, you'll notice there are several longstanding open recommendations, and again, my team is working on closing those recommendations. And again, I'm confident, based on reports and the information that they're being provided, is that we'll wrap those up by July, midsummer as well. And so they should be closed by my next update. Moving on to next year's audit plan, I will say I had, I've been here now for maybe 3 months, I think. And so coming on board, I really had to step up in a completely new process. And so what you'll see is a brief description of that, identifying an audit universe, getting to know campus stakeholders and how we do business. It's a big place, and so that's quite a challenge, but I've been making the rounds, learning about what we do and how we do it. And then, of course, doing a high-level risk assessment at this point, identifying themes that I think are important. I will say, rather than going into any detail, what you'll notice is, based on the themes that I've put into the work plan, that we now have projects that map onto those themes. And the goal is that we're the internal audit office for the entire university. And so what you'll see is a broader scope in our audit program over time, so that we're providing greater coverage in terms of health and safety audits, research compliance audits, financial audits, unit audits, policy compliance, and then, of course, compliance audits as well, IT security, of course. And so that's it's just sort of an understanding as we move forward and begin to continue to refine our risk assessment and audit planning process, as that kind of coverage is going to continue, so that I can report to John and the IARB and to you about what coverage we're actually providing. Again, based upon my high-level risk assessment, I think my plan begins to address that, and again, over the next years, continue to refine that, so I can provide better information about the coverage that we are providing, and then related to some of the coverage that we may not be able to get to based on the resources that we have.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Well, with that, how about questions from the regents for the U of A? Seeing none, we will move, because this is an action item. Thank you, John. Bill, you may go back to opposite ends of the spectrum there. I move that the committee approve the FY 2026 internal audit plans for Arizona State University, Northern Arizona University, and the University of Arizona, as described in the executive summary. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Motion carries. We will now proceed to discuss a series of proposed new charter templates for the university's internal audit departments and their internal audit review boards. Brad, again, we're going to have you give us the introduction of those changes.
Thank you, Chair. So the Institute of Internal Auditors, which is the national professional organization that governs the internal audit profession and provides best practices for internal audit review boards, set out some new global internal audit standards that govern the practice of this work. So there's a number of pieces that they've clarified in their new template. Our internal auditor teams at the universities have worked with our staff auditor and taken those guidelines and translated them into a template that makes sense in the context of how the universities are governed, specifically around the sort of shared and delegated relationships between this committee and the local internal audit review boards. So by joining in that work, they put together some templates for your review and approval so that the universities could then implement those on campus and be compliant with the IIA standards.
Okay. I guess, Brad, the one question is just the efficiencies that will be gained from this process. Do you have an insight on what's going to change greatly or not?
I would speculate that not much is going to change at all, sir.
Okay. Fair enough. This is an action item. I move that the committee approve the new proposed charters for the university's internal audit departments and their internal audit review boards as described in the executive summary. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. My favorite part. We will now convene an executive session for review of risk management related to the component unit affiliates and review of the assignments with the university's chief audit executives. The committee is expected to adjourn at the conclusion of our executive session at approximately 4:15. Do I have a motion to enter into executive session for the executive session items listed on our agenda?
Second.
So moved. There we go. Okay.
Sorry.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Any abstentions? Public session is now in recess. The committee will move to the executive session.